All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Atheists Having Cocktails with Christians. I've been trying to get this old guy on for a while now. You guys will know him mostly from his bigger band, Everyday Life. That was a huge, great band, put out, 3-4 albums back in the 90s. But before that, when I first met this gentleman, he was in a kind of death metal band called Nicene Creed. So I first saw this guy play when I was 15 at the Roxy with The Crucified and Mortal and Betrayal, and it was Wish for Eden's first big show. So yeah. I think that would have been like 92, 93. So it's been quite a while.
It's been a while, yeah.
So everybody, my guest tonight is Carl Weaver. Thanks for doing this, man. I know we've been schedules and everything and whatnot, but we're getting it done. So
man, yeah, let's do it.
Welcome to the show, my friend. So
thanks for having me.
I always just start with this, man. Where's Carl in his life right now, man? What do you do? What's going on in your personal life right now? What you up to?
I'm a delivery driver for FedEx Ground. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. I used to be a contractor with FedEx, but I sold that business. And now I just drive for the guy I sold it to. We ran a couple businesses in town.
Nice.
And, all the kids went to school, to college, and a couple moved out. So,
nice.
Just living. Yeah.
Nice. How old are you now?
I am 53.
53? I think the last time we talked would have been like 30 years ago, man. It was a long.
It was a while. It was super wild.
So are you doing any music still, or are you just kind of?
No music, no.
No music?
I mean, I still have all my gear, but I don't really do anything. I play maybe twice a year to entertain myself, to see if I could still do it way slower, since I don't obviously play every day. So
no musical projects, just working and living life and married and kids. I'm the same way. I stopped playing in bands about 10 years ago. I still have all my stuff, but I think I've pulled out my bass maybe 3 times in the last 5 years, just because I'm more of if I have a project, I get excited about it and want to write, but if I'm not doing anything, I'm just so there's things to watch on Netflix and all that kind of stuff. So
I think if I had maybe some more gear to record ideas, you know what I mean? I know technology's advanced so much, it should be easy, but I don't do it.
I hear you. It's one of those things. It's unless I'm in a band really working for something, I'm just kind of because that was the fun thing for me as a musician. Was I liked the writing process with my bandmates, and somebody come up with an idea, then you'd come up with something to fit into it, and just the progression of how that song would work. And then obviously playing live is always the best times, so.
Yeah, for sure. That's part of being in a band is working together and making that music and having that kind of magic. So
always. Well, let's start back with Nicene Creed before we get to Everyday Life. How did that band evolve? How old were you? Just give me the history of that band, because I don't think a lot of people did Nicene ever record anything, or?
No, we made a demo, but we fell short of recording an album on a label. We were close, but we never did it. How old was I? Wow. I was probably 20, maybe. Okay. You know what I mean? But dang. I played in a little band before then called Atheistic Doom. What was like a weird. It was like a noise punk band.
Okay.
The guys from Terminal Generation and Betrayal were all around, and I was friends with those guys. And then I think I heard Bolt Thrower or Cannibal Corpse, and I was like, "This is the hardest music I've ever heard. Yep. I've got to play this or try."
Yeah.
And so I got some guys together, and we did Nicene, and it was awesome. It was fun. That show we did at the Roxy was a big show for us.
Yeah.
But it was super fun.
Yeah.
And
was that your like one of your early shows, or had you guys been playing around a little bit before that show?
Um, Nicene had been playing around for a while. We played Gazzari's with the Crucified.
Okay.
So we did a bunch of shows. I used to put on shows at my church in Bellflower,
Hmm.
and we had a ton of bands play. You know, Betrayal. I think Focus played there. We had a
Okay.
bunch of bands play at that little church, and it was super fun.
Nice. Because they when I that was the only time I ever saw Nicene or Nicene. How did you guys
Nicene,
Nicene? Okay.
Nicene, yeah.
Yeah, that was the only time I ever saw you guys, and then later on, you happen to go to Everyday Life, but I dug Nicene. I mean, I still am a big death metal grindcore guy. I love that style of music. So
Yeah, we were progressing, and like I said, we didn't record. We had an opportunity to go on tour with another bigger band, and none of those things worked out. Our drummer at that time left to go be in the military, and so that kind of not kiboshed everything, but made it a little different.
yeah.
And I'm I don't know if you remember it, but at that show at the Roxy, we brought out Ted,
Yep, I
and
remember that.
we did a song called '90s Warfare,
Hmm.
and during that whole time, we were still doing, or I was still doing Nicene Creed, but um, I knew Ted, and we were goofing around doing like weird hip hop
Hmm.
type metal stuff, just goofing, and that we wrote that song and we performed it that night, and the boys in Nicene did not like that. You
Oh,
know,
really?
because
So I remember the
no,
crowd really digging
because
it. And
oh
then,
yeah. The crowd liked it. The crowd liked it, but the rest of the boys in Nicene were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that again,
did they kind of
which
feel
was
that?
awesome. You know what I mean? It was cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To get feedback from the guys like that, and so with our drummer leaving, Carlos left, so I was like, well, I'll just do EDL. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or we'll make this band.
Yeah. Now, if I remember, Ted's rapper name was MC Colorblind, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because was it kind of maybe the other guys in the metal band saw what you were maybe leaning towards and were kind of getting pissed about it, or just like they didn't want
Uh,
to go, or they wanted to stay true to metal?
they were just more like, I can't believe it. I can't believe your goofy rap metal thing is, that got a bigger reaction than our death metal or
Yeah.
our grindcore. You know what I mean? And so it was funny. You know what I mean? And I didn't know it was going to go that way. I thought we'll just see what happens. You know what I mean? When we
Yeah.
performed it, but everybody dug it, and like I said, that band, it didn't run its course, but um, I didn't know any other drummers that could play that fast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm sure if we stayed in it, but it seemed like some of the guys, I don't know. I just wanted to play music, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And some of the guys, uh, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Everybody kind
uh,
of had their own kind of idea what they wanted.
yeah. Some guys didn't understand that, or didn't get that people were liking it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I don't know. It was awkward a little bit
Well, I think at that
sometimes.
time, especially with Body Count coming out and Rage hitting the scene, like that metal, that rap metal was going to be huge within the next year or two. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah,
there were so many grindcore and thrash bands in LA at that time. I mean, you could have picked 100 to play a show. You know what I mean? But that genre specific, when it came to more of that rap, funk, hardcore punk, metal stuff, there was Body Count. I mean, obviously Anthrax and Public Enemy did their thing, years early, so I mean, like,
yeah.
I think the
I don't know
writing
if
of
you
POD coming up at that time too. So,
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that movie Judgment Night, or the
oh yeah,
soundtrack for
oh yeah,
Judgment Night. That's what made me want to do that kind of stuff with Ted,
oh
is
yeah,
because I wanted something similar, or that energy of of that,
mhm,
that urban kind of metal stuff is what I was looking to try to achieve. And I don't know, I think we did all right.
Yeah, you guys, your first. I don't really remember the third record, but Disgruntled and American Standard were fantastic. They could have easily, I believe, could have been up there in the same par with what POD got huge with when they did Southtown and all. Actually, I think that stuff's better than POD. I never liked POD. I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of but
There's not a lot of bands from those eras that all of us played in that ever made it. They're like one of the only ones. So at
yeah,
least out of the thousands of bands that we all knew, somebody made it. You know what I mean? I
yeah.
don't know if they like it or if they're happy about it or whatever, but at least somebody did it. You know what I mean?
Well, I just remember getting their first recording the Snuff the Punk record, and it was like the devil or some gangster dude holding the devil. I was like, this is lame, man. This is just, I mean, and then you had, also the early '90s gangster rap with like the gospel gangsters and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. It felt to me just very, very just lame, just weak, and just lame.
We were
Not you
young
guys,
back
not
then.
yeah, no,
I
not
mean, we were all young, and I've listened to some interviews or read transcripts of stuff that I did back then, and it's bad. You know what I mean? It's bad.
No, I can
So
hear you. I have a couple songs that I've written and tried to put out there. We never got huge, but my first band, Out of Step, just straight up just punk band. I wrote a song about Columbine, and it's very offensive, and I mean, we were trying to make things happen, so I had made a bunch of copies and made a little manifesto letter and sent it to like the 700 Club and a bunch of other Christian organizations, thinking, man, if these guys start like picking our stuff, man, we'll get recognized. It didn't work, And I look at that song now.
yeah,
That was just a 20-year-old's pissed off view of the world at the time, and I regret what I had to say in that song at the time.
yeah. I mean, that's the age bracket we were all in. We were all making complaint rock. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
yeah,
it was so long ago. We've all changed and moved and grown since
definitely.
then. So, but yeah, back then it was some of the stuff's a little cringy.
Yeah. Now, with starting with the death metal band, were you guys specifically wanting to be a Christian band? Was it
Oh
more
yeah, yeah,
like, okay,
yeah,
you were
yeah,
like, we want to
yeah.
be a Christian?
Nicene was like a hardcore Christian band, and when I first started playing guitar, that's what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to naively write songs about how cool Jesus was, right? And at first they're just all big power chord, big open chords,
Mhm.
as a musician, and they weren't heavy or groovy, they weren't
Yeah,
exciting at all. But somebody showed me power chords, and then it all changed, and
yeah.
then it was punk rock and as fast as I could play, really.
Hmm. Well,
But
definitely.
yeah, we were just uh, trying to do the Lord's work. I don't know if it really worked that way, but that's what
No.
we thought we were trying to do in our head.
Now, were you raised in a Christian home, or just did you come to find
Yeah,
Christianity later on in your life?
no, I was raised Christian. Yeah,
Okay, same here. I was, we went to Assembly of God, evangelical churches, and I was the same way, until I wasn't. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to be, playing bands like, you guys and the Crucified, Mortification and Vengeance and all those bands, because I'm
yeah,
a bass player, so I'm not that great, but I can play that kind of style. I'm good. I can do, but it's just like you want me to play like really funky, fun stuff. I'll be like, no, that's not what I do. You know what I mean? But I grew
right.
up in the same kind of way where, grew up in the church and, grew up listening to the Crucified and, Vengeance and all those bands and loved, Slayer. Still, even as a Christian, I still like, Napalm and all that stuff. So,
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, not like we were trying to all those those bands, the Christian bands in that scene. It's not like some of them were trying to emulate those they would call them secular metal bands, but
mhm,
we all got inspiration from that kind of stuff,
mhm.
and it's fine.
Oh, definitely. I mean, without the Slayers and the Venoms and,
Yeah, we
all that
wouldn't know
stuff,
what to do.
there wouldn't be a Deliverance or, a Vengeance or anything like that because, those bands were years before those bands. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so I mean,
But
they
yeah, no,
definitely influenced the sound. Maybe not a lyrical content or a
well, yeah,
spiritual content, but definitely a sound.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, we were out there trying to do the Lord's work, and same thing with the EDL. We changed over time a little bit, but we were just doing what we thought we could or should do. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
So after Nicene's over, you guys start doing everyday life. So was that like all right, man, this is going to be my focus, music, this band, let's get it going.
oh yeah, yeah. When Nicene was over, I was like, all right, cool. I'm gonna make this EDL band. Everyday life. And the original idea was to be like all the sounds,
Mm-hmm.
like all of the genres, funk, hip hop, punk rock, pop, all of that stuff. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? I wanted it to encompass the sounds that I heard in my neighborhoods in Los Angeles, right? I
definitely.
wanted it to be everything. And we didn't really capture that, we
I
didn't
think you
really get
did,
there, but,
man. Especially with
but,
doing the cover of Whitey on the Moon, and I think you guys did a really, really great job, and it didn't seem fake, and it didn't seem um insincere. You know what I mean? Like your guys' sound, it was you guys kind of taking, like you said, your styles and making it your own. But I always thought, Disgruntled and American Standard were great records.
yeah, thank you. American Standard is probably what it captured what we did live. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That's who we were. Disgruntled. Again, we talked about being cringy. Sometimes I listen to those and I don't even know how we got signed. you know,
I hear
uh,
it.
I know, I know. There's songs that were on our demo that aren't on that record that are more similar to American Standard stuff.
Okay.
But part of what EDL did when we first started, it was really just me and Ted. Like, we didn't have a drummer, we didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
bass player, we didn't have anything. So we would hassle this guy, Eric, from our church to program us some beats
Mm-hmm.
on his drum machine. And me and Ted would go, just me and him, and play these songs that we were making up.
Nice.
And yeah, and then over time, I talked Eric into playing drums with us, and we actually got Orlando Greenhill to play bass with us for a little while.
He was the guy with the dreads and the big beard, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. I think he has no hair now, but
Yeah.
back then, um, Orlando played, and those first, I don't know, 6 months of shows, what made everyday life fun for the guys in the band at that early stage is that we were just improvising everything. Like, we didn't really have songs.
Mm-hmm.
We were just, let's do a little weird funky beat thing, right? And we would just riff off of each other,
Yeah.
and it was really exciting because we were just doing that live, like in front of people. Like, we would throw out like stinkers and bombs, you know what I mean? Where it wouldn't really work, but over time we got better at working together and creating live like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably, I don't know, like I said, 6 months. It was a little while into this experiment of everyday life. And they were like, dude, play that song you guys played whatever last month. And we would have no idea what they're talking about because we're just making it up. So we were like, oh, we got to start remembering this or start writing stuff. And
Yeah.
so that's when we started to kind of remember and structure songs, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But at first we were just goofing around. It was really fun.
Yeah, because I saw Everyday Life twice. I saw you guys once at the Country Club. I know it was with the Crucified, but I don't remember who else who played. I want to say it was probably Betrayal or Precious Death. One of those
It
two.
might have been Betrayal. Yeah.
I think it was Betrayal. Yeah, and then I saw you guys another time. I think down in down in Huntington somewhere. What is that club? Club Nuclear or something like that.
Yeah.
It was somewhere down like Huntington,
Yeah.
Newport, somewhere around there. Because that's the thing. I lived in Ventura, so I didn't have a
Yeah.
car. So it was Hollywood was a lot easier to get a ride to from friends than way down in Huntington.
Yeah.
So,
Down south. Yeah.
so usually like Roxy, the whiskey. Only went to Gazzari's one time before they shut down. I don't even remember who was playing there. But did you guys play? Was it Nicene, or I don't know if it was Nicene or Everyday Life? Did you guys play with Mortification the first time they came over in Los Alamitos?
Yeah. But we didn't.
Okay.
I don't think we played. I don't think we played at Los Alamitos. That was. I did a show with them at that little church. I did. Used to do shows in Bellflower. But yeah, they
Okay.
came and played there with us. But I think it was Nicene Creed. It wasn't EDL.
Okay.
I don't. It might have been EDL. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
That's I remember. I mean, because when Mortification first came over, again, I was living in Ventura, and they played at some VFW hall in Los Alamitos, and that was like
Yeah.
120 miles from where we lived, and I had to beg my folks to drive me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I had to like do chores out the butt for like a month. You know what I mean? But I was,
Yeah. It was a big ask. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, obviously staying for the show and driving back. So, I mean, luckily, my parents were awesome about doing that kind of stuff, but I cannot remember who played that show other than Mortification. I don't remember.
Yeah. I know that I had them play at that church in Bellflower, but
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was EDL or Nicene Creed. It could have been, I would say it would have been Nicene because I don't know why I would have tried to put EDL on that bill.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the one time I do remember the one specific show I do remember was with you guys was the country club with Betrayal and the Crucified. And then I remember we went to that Denny's over off Reseda Boulevard, and you guys were in there eating breakfast, and we kind of were like, "Oh, hey, what's up, man?" You know what I mean? Like, love your show, So, and then we went and got our food, and then moped out.
That was yeah. I miss that of playing those shows and then going to Denny's afterwards in Hollywood. That was we always did it. It was super fun.
Yeah.
You would always meet up with the bands or fans that went to the show. It was always fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good time, I mean, a lot of good memories of youth back then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all right, so how did Everyday Life end up getting signed? And when you guys got signed, how did your company feel about putting the Reginald Denny photo on the first record? How did that happen, man?
Well, we had to ask, right? We had to get permission from Reginald, and so Ted did a lot more of some of that label stuff than I did.
Okay.
But we had to reach out to the family and ask. We showed them like our mock-up of what we wanted to do and like a demo of the tracks and stuff, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. You know what I mean? So he gave us permission
right on
to get that image. I can't exactly remember how we got signed.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we did a demo and I think we just sent it out.
Yeah.
And
who was your first label? What label was that?
Why would you ask that question? I don't this is what Ted's for, man.
But it wasn't like Intense or Frontline or the major like one that you would see. And it wasn't, I mean, Tooth and Nail didn't exist then. So
no, it wasn't Tooth and Nail. If you want, I can look. Yes, if you want, I can.
Yes, please.
But yes, please look. Yes, please. Okay. But
and was it a Christian label? I mean, were you on?
Yes, it was a Christian label. Yes, this was a Christian label. It could have been Frontline. Oh my God! Why would you ask this question? Band. Holy smokes, man! We're on the internets. Can you believe it?
I know. We're on the internets. On the internets. It's a haiku.
Okay, it says Alarma, KMG, and
Alarma Records. Okay, that's
okay. There you go.
There we go. I knew I was like,
Alarma.
it's not Word. It wasn't Rex. I was like, I knew it was like one of those like one word
Yeah.
things. I just couldn't think of it.
Yeah, it was Alarma, and those guys were nice. They were good. They let us do more or less anything, you know. The first record is kind of hyper polished. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we had I believe it was Lanny Cordova.
Oh, Lenny
Um,
Cordova. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, he produced it, so it's kind of super shiny, you
That's
know.
so weird they would pick him. You know what I mean? I mean, like, I get it that he knows how to produce and engineer and that kind of stuff, man. Lenny Cordova was like a fucking, like, long haired metal guy. Like,
He was like a pop guy. He was
yeah,
like a, you know, like a glam pop guy. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we
weird.
were too rough, or maybe we needed direction. Again, every record that we did, we made a song up in the studio, like as a throwback to what we used to do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we would just be like, let's just see what happens. We're just gonna throw this riff out and we're
Yeah.
gonna jam, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe we were a little out of control, or didn't have a lot of direction or something. I should shit if I know. I don't know.
Yeah. I think on the first record, I still think my favorite song is E. coli. I think that's still my first.
E. coli, yeah, that's a good one. I like
This
Love
was a good one.
Lies.
Yeah. Love
Love
Live. Yeah.
Lies is
Yeah.
it's it's kind of where we were headed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like the direction of what we wanted to, or what I wanted to try to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking
Right
on
now, I
American
got to go
Standard.
through and look at
I
the
know. I'm gonna
the
have to look up.
stupid songs, man.
We're both like, all right, now I gotta see what this is.
But yeah, we tried to do, you know, I don't know, you know, some we were young, and you know, the label was like, let's try to do stupid ideas, I guess, sometimes. So,
Yeah.
but that's, you know, whatever.
Wow, that would have got two. I was like, okay, that didn't get put out in 2010.
Whoever did our Wikipedia page did pretty good.
Right on.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, Deprived. I think that was my favorite song on American Standard. That was a great song.
Yeah, that song kills, man. That
Yeah.
song's so good. That song's so good live. There's a little breakdown in the middle where it kind of gets quiet, and there's a little bass line. Um, the first time we performed that, it was at a big venue in Irvine, and man, it was magic. It was so beautiful.
Did you guys play that big Staples Center show?
Staples. I'm gonna say no on Staples Center.
Oh, okay, okay. I remember Mark and Crusoe talking about it was a big show at the Irvine Staples Center, the basketball place. It was like them and like Undercover and like tons of like the up like Focused and Unashamed,
Oh,
all the up and coming.
so there was a big show at UC Irvine. There was a big show at UC Irvine at the school that was massive. There was a lot of big bands, and yeah, we played that one,
Nice.
but we didn't play a Staples Center, so
Oh,
no.
okay.
But there was a big show at at the college in Irvine. There was a big one. Yeah, it was pretty. It was a big festival kind of thing.
Now, do you know like for your first record compared to American Standard, do you know which one maybe sold better?
I'm gonna go with the second one,
Okay.
American Standard.
Okay.
Yeah, these would be questions Ted would know more than I do.
All right. All right. I hear it. I mean,
But I would
did you
imagine,
well when it came to like paying you for your work and all that kind of stuff. Like,
uh, you know, I'm gonna be honest, man. Playing rock and roll for us back then did not pay any bills.
oh,
There
totally,
was no there was no bills to be paid, or there was bills to pay, but
yeah,
it wasn't from that. The only way EDL made money was when we would go on tour,
hmm
and when we would tour, we would make money. Each one of us had day jobs. You know
hmm
what I mean? And for the most part, we would take like the summer off. Like I would take a leave of absence from my job and go on tour and use. But that money we made on tour would, you know, cover all the bills and stuff.
yeah.
And you know, yeah, but yeah, they paid for, you know, recording and
Mhm.
artwork and all that stuff. You know,
So, but
but I
they
still
treated
get
They treated you fairly, at least, you think?
More or less. Yeah. I think it was we didn't get, I don't owe anybody any money. You know
Right
what I
on.
mean? And I would say we still get like, $20 checks. You know, I can still go out and get like a, 6 pack of beer or
Yeah.
go out to dinner or something. But
I will say you guys should start a GoFundMe or something and raise enough money to put the first two records out on vinyl, man. Since vinyl's
on
such
vinyl,
oh yeah,
you think, I don't know.
dude.
Every now and then we get approached and talked to about doing reissue stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not sure who has the masters or where the masters are or how to even get a hold of that.
Yeah.
I'd have to reach out to Ted and the label. And those guys, Ted is super connected with those dudes
Mhm.
way more than I am. He would have, that's what he does. So, it's possible that we could do something.
I mean, you could do like a package where a remastered CD, a vinyl, I mean, tapes are real big now. Kids are back into getting like it's a cool hip thing to do is to have cassettes now.
I guess. I mean,
Yeah,
they were cool.
yeah, they were
They were
cool.
fun.
But for me, I love
Yeah.
vinyl. I just like the warmness of it, and I'm a huge, always have been a big vinyl collector. So the last
Yeah.
few years with everybody with Boone's music, I mean, he's been putting Betrayal out on vinyl, and Vengeance and Deliverance and Mortification and all Tooth and Nail stuff. So I mean, I've been
Wow.
yeah, I just they just put out. I saw. And it's so weird because I am not a Christian at all anymore. I haven't been a Christian since probably the age of 21, and I'm 48 now. But there are so many bands, and this is why a lot of I do this show is one. We'll get to some religious stuff here in a little bit, but also, man, growing up in Southern California, that music was immersive everywhere. You heard Sublime, you had Supertones, you had No Effects, you had MXPX. Everybody listened to everything out there, and especially where I grew up, I still had a lot of Christian friends that even though I wasn't a Christian, or I wouldn't even say at that point I wasn't a Christian, I didn't know what I wanted. I was still kind of hanging out and putting my toe in the water because I didn't want to. I was hedging my bets. I didn't want to fully just walk away from anything, but also at the
Yeah.
point I was a drinker, I was a smoker, I was I had girlfriends, fighting, also I was living a crazy
You were
young
just
life.
living. Yeah. You were
Yeah.
just living, and regardless of back then, for me and some of the people I know back then, we were just living. We were
Yeah.
just kids. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Regardless of, that belief system of Christianity, you're still a kid. You're still a problem. You still make mistakes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Uh, from their point of view, it
Yeah.
would be a mistake. You know what I mean? But you're just living. You're just having experiences. So you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
But I mean,
It's
you'll
totally
agree
fine.
with. Well, I mean, you definitely went through this because I mean, I went through this. We're in this, somewhat of the same. I'm 48. You're a little bit older than me, but also, I mean, like even just being a Christian back then and still liking metal, you were still a pariah. If you weren't, listening to
Oh
like
yeah.
Petra
Oh no.
and
You would get yelled at if you listened to Slayer or
yeah,
something
but
stupid,
not
and you
not
would
even
just
Slayer. Like if you were listening to Christian metal, even the youth pastor would be like, "This isn't Christian." It's, how do you
oh
know?
oh oh oh. Yeah. I mean, the older folks didn't understand what the kids were doing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's fine. It's not the that music isn't their jam, and so they found it hard to believe that uh, a message of Christ they could come through that. You know what I mean? They missed that. So sometimes they would come to those shows when I did them at the church and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I would have some of the old timers and the church bosses come by and see what we were trying to do.
Hmm.
Um, and we had approval all the time, and
Yeah.
they saw what we were trying to do. But yeah, there were some people that just were not, you know, they weren't into it.
No, definitely, definitely. Um, so, I mean, even with the everyday life, that was still kind of your mission. That was still a Christian band with everyday life.
Yeah, I would go the first, we were on a Christian label, so we were just trying to be positive and maybe complaint rock like like a what is it, a social commentary
Hmm.
on society,
Hmm.
because uh, I I grew up in a city called Linwood,
Hmm.
which is next to Compton and Watson,
Hmm.
Willowbrook, and I grew up in Pico Rivera, Whittier, North Long Beach, so real Southern California, real kind
Yeah.
of rough a little bit. Um, so just knowing what was kind of happening out
Hmm.
there, what I mean, not necessarily always in a church
Hmm.
sheltered, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Uh, so I think we were just trying to comment on some of the stuff that we saw as young men out there, you know what I mean? And
Yeah. Well,
possibly how Christ could maybe help out,
yeah.
you know what
Well,
I mean?
especially when, people, especially going out there. I mean, even though I didn't live, in that rough, I mean, Ventura had its rough areas. We had Colonia,
Yeah.
the Mexican Mafia. We had, Hell's Angels. I mean, it was a rough town. And Oxnard next to us was definitely a rough town. But I think the people that, didn't grow up out there, especially with, nobody believed anything really until, those cops beat up, Rodney King. And then everyone's like, oh, this is really, people would hear stories of, LAPD being vicious to everyone and they never believed it. They're like, no, they're just dealing with, the worst of the worst. And no, man, those guys were corrupt police force for many, many years. And people that lived down there knew it, and people that lived in bad areas knew the cops weren't your friends and they weren't there to help you, you know? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think,
But
like I said, with your guys' music, for me, I mean, I got a little bit of the Christian aspect of it, but for me, it was just more of like, opening your eyes to what we live in our reality every day.
yeah, that was kind of the idea, and maybe bringing some of our church experience into
Yeah,
that arena of where we
yeah.
lived and what we did, you know.
But I liked you
But
guys because you weren't preaching. You know what I mean? At that point in
no,
time,
I mean,
when I
it
was seeing you
was,
guys, I mean, I was done hearing that. Like, if I wanted to hear a sermon, I would have went to church. I wanted to experience music and have fun in the pit and get my aggressions out. And still, I mean, doing it for Jesus or whatever. It was still, I was young and wanted to have fun.
yeah, I mean, maybe our, Nicene and atheistic doom was the hyper religious type, you know, that kind of stuff. EDL was more of a music for me, more of a musical experiment. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? To try to encompass all those things, kind of like a radio dial, all the way across country, pop, all of that stuff is what I wanted to try. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from with there were some bands that, were in some venues in that scene where they had to do altar calls. They had to do some of that hyper religious stuff. And I don't know if that was EDL's jam, you
Yeah,
know. We
yeah.
wanted to be positive and do what we could, with explaining what we saw and maybe some possibilities to help people out in those situations. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That might be in those difficult areas in life. But
Definitely.
you know,
I'm gonna have to re-listen to Moment of Clarity, your third record, because I mean, I remember listening to it, but at that point in time, I was really not into that style for a while. So I'm going to re-listen to it. I was going to today at work while I worked, but I was just too busy, so I just turned on the radio and got to work. But what? Well,
that's cool.
after your third record, like, did you guys kind of feel this was going to be your last record? I mean, what happened after the third record to where there was no more EDL after that?
Well, uh, sorry, my cats are running around.
No, you're cool.
So
I saw him up on the couch looking around like,
yeah, that one's a problem. He's a good boy, but he's a problem.
all cats are
So the
problems, man. All cats are. I have two cats. They're jerks, but I love them. You know.
Yeah, he's a good boy. So moment of clarity. I apologize for me. Those guitar tones that you listen to, in my mind, trash, and
Okay.
I apologize. Uh, we recorded that thing in Sacramento, drums, guitars, bass. We recorded it. Um, I'm drawing a blank with the Deftones. Is I used some of Steph's gear, but
Oh,
I
right
can't
on.
remember. Yeah, I can't remember the gentleman's name that helped with recording. It wasn't Sean Lopez. Sean helped a lot. The dude from Far. But there was another gentleman that helped a lot with the initial tracking, and
Mhm.
we turned it in, and the label did not like it because it was. I think it was too harsh. Like it was
Okay.
way too heavy. And so we went and re-recorded them, the guitar tracks and a couple other kind of tracks on that record. And the guitars were digital, so they're kind of weak.
Okay.
Um, so to me, it lacks a little bit of the punch. You
Mhm.
said you haven't heard it.
I haven't heard it in a long time. I do
All
remember
right,
listening to it, but it's been a minute. So
right. So as an artist, and you know this, and people that watch this are artists. You know how when you have an idea or you haven't something an inspiration or however you make your music, right? If you're connecting to something or if you just create it in your head, the one song that came out perfectly from my head to your ears is a song called Let It Ride on that record. What I heard in my head is the exact translation
okay.
to what you will hear. And sometimes as an artist, you have an idea and you're working on it and it's not quite right, or you get a producer and it
Mhm.
gets all cut up or whatever. But that particular song is exactly what was supposed to be. So
Okay.
very cool for that song. Um, EDL did another record. We did 4 records.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I wasn't all the way on the 4th record. Hold on. I've got the internet again to
I hear
see
you.
what the I think it's just called Everyday Life.
Oh,
Yes.
that's right. You had a self-titled. That's correct. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. 2001. So um, for me, I was going through a lot of personal stuff, um, maybe belief structures, a baby, right? Again, uh, rock and roll doesn't pay, or at our level, rock
Yeah.
and roll don't pay. They don't pay for diapers.
Nope.
So I had to focus on, you know, real life and babies.
Mhm. Oh,
So
I hear you. I mean, luckily,
so
my wife was
yeah,
always been supportive. Yeah, we just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary in September, and I've started dating her when she was 19 when I was in my first band. And after my first band, we broke up and I started playing in an Irish, like Dropkick Murphys kind of band with
yeah,
bagpipes and whatnot. And that I hear what you're saying. Like we played huge shows. I mean, we almost got signed to Hellcat Records. We were that close, and it dissolved. And then I played in a couple hardcore bands, after that for quite a few years. And like I said, I think the only time I ever made money was we went and played a big festival, Oi Festival in Atlanta in 2004, and I was always the manager of the band. I took care of the bookings and did all the
yeah,
merch, but it was always the agreement of the band. All front. I've always made decent money in my job. I'm a body piercer, and I've been doing it 30 years now. So I've always had a better income than my oi and punk rock brethren who lived with
yeah,
6 people in an apartment. So I'd always pay for the merch, and when the merch got paid back, then we'd split the money in the band and whatnot. But yeah, that was the only time we ever made money, was playing that one festival where, I mean, we had shirts we had for like 4 years, and finally I'm just like selling shit at $5 a shirt, like I'm just like,
just get
get it
rid of
out
it.
of here,
Yeah.
so I hear you. I mean, we'd play shows and I'd be like, all right, are we getting paid? They're like, you owe us $160 at the bar. We're like, shit, so.
I mean, I, I'm not complaining.
Oh, it
Rock and
was a
roll was
great time,
awesome. Those
yeah,
experiences were awesome, and like I said, we could make money if we went on the road. You know what I
yeah,
mean? We really could, and you got to remember during that time frame too is when it went from CDs to digital downloads. You know what I mean? There was the whole industry kind of freaked out, and all the bands, including us, were in the middle of that. So it was really weird and complicated on trying to know how to make money
Mm-hmm.
off of album sales at that time. And the only way I knew how to do it was to go out on the road.
Yeah.
But we all had real jobs, and Ted had a child, I had a child, and again,
Well, life gets in the way.
had,
I mean, that's you realize, hey, I've got more responsibilities than myself. If you and the band could all work whatever job and live in a house together, that's one thing. But also, guys,
yeah,
never bandmates. Bad idea.
yeah. I mean, that there's a reason why some of the biggest bands in the world are that that's all they are. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? That they've given their whole life to that. And I've known dudes that still do, have done that, and it didn't work. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So it's
and they're
still,
still trying. Yeah,
yeah, it's still a limited window of possibility. But those guys that are the biggest bands, that's all they are. You know what I mean? That's their whole existence and all they will ever be.
well, and that's
So
their income. That's what you're right. That's exactly what they are. They're that band.
yeah, I mean, they've given their whole life for that. You know what I mean? Like you said, they did live together. They did live in vans. They did, I mean, they've done every dirty aspect of music to get there. And then
Yeah,
I've known dudes that have done all that stuff and still or it just didn't work. You know
well,
what
I
I mean?
hear
Which
you.
I mean, it happens.
Yeah. So after the fourth record, was it time to just say, "All right, man,
Oh yeah,
the band's over, or at least a hiatus. We'll see what happens in the future." Or,
well, I left after the third record to the
okay,
fourth record. We were writing songs, and I think there's two songs, possibly three, but I think two songs on the fourth record that I wrote.
okay,
But like I said, there was I had to pay bills.
yeah,
I didn't like some label stuff going on,
mhm,
and my belief structure kind of changed. Not like that would have mattered in EDL. You know what I mean?
mhm,
That wouldn't have really mattered.
yeah,
But I was kind of really cranky about it, about a lot of stuff. So I was
mhm,
just like, no, I'm not going to participate. You know what I mean? Because I know what the label wanted us to do. I know what some of the guys wanted us to do. And I didn't want to do that.
Now, was it all four original the whole time, or other than you and
No,
Ted?
no, no, no,
People come
no.
and go.
We had a bunch of different kind of bass players. We had Orlando Greenhill, Jason Bowen, a gentleman named Ox. Forget his full name, Mike, I think, but uh, Jason Ox, uh, Jeff Elbell, Jim Roop. I know there's a couple more,
Oh
but
wow, you
bass
guys were some
players,
bass players, man.
yeah, bass players was kind of like a door. You know what I mean? It was not revolving, but it was pretty close to a revolving door. But
Who was your
the
favorite?
original guys were
Who was your favorite that you played with out of all of them? Who was your favorite bass player? Show
that's
up,
tough.
get the job done, do what you got to do, play.
Well, I mean, Jeff Elbell and Orlando Greenhill, those guys are like musical geniuses, right? They're on a way different level than I am.
Mhm.
So those guys could kind of keep me in check. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They would work with me on trying to develop myself and make my ideas make sense, right? Um, so that's what I love and appreciate about those two guys. Those guys were awesome. Jason and Jim, they were we would just tear it up. You know what I mean? It was like full aggression. It was awesome. You know what I mean? So uh, I can't pick one. No,
Okay.
you know what I
Okay.
mean. But those other two, the like I said, Orlando and Jeff, those guys are like musical geniuses. So it made it way easier for me to try to get my ideas out and across.
Now, when you say you were having conflict with the label about maybe ideas, was it ideological ideas or just business ideas,
Oh,
or
business.
okay,
Just yeah, just business. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's all. Just business stuff. So nothing personal. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But that label, I think, was if I remember right, was maybe struggling. They wanted us to do something weird, and I was like, "There's no way in hell I'm doing that." You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Uh,
Well,
so
obviously you had your own personal integrity that was saying, no, that makes the band
yeah.
or weakened or puts us in bad light, so
Well,
therefore don't do it.
yeah, and then the other guys wanted to keep going and doing it, and that's fine, And I also during that time frame, I actually moved from Southern California. I left town as well. Um, so I wasn't there to participate anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, then after that, like, what when was like
Oh,
the
well, they did their fourth record, and then it was kind of over. You
yeah.
know what I mean? They, I think they played one or two shows, I believe.
Hmm.
I wasn't there, so I don't recall. I don't know, but I think they did one or two shows, and then I think it was just kind of over.
Yeah. What
I think everybody had moved on.
is Ted still doing music? Is he in projects still or no? Was that kind of
Not that I'm aware of. No,
okay?
I talk to Ted often, but he doesn't. I know he had a few things in the work and stuff that he's kind of toying with, but that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, if you guys had an opportunity to do like a really cool reunion show, would you do it?
Probably.
Yeah.
We tried maybe about 6 years ago.
Okay.
Um, the band got together um, in Southern California, all of us, and it was like the first time we've seen each other in whatever it was, 20 years or something.
Yeah.
And everybody, we probably all had conflicts with each other over the time, but we got together and it was beautiful. It was awesome. You know what I
That's
mean?
great.
We got to amend anything that was broken.
Yeah.
Um, so we performed. We were getting ready to do a couple big shows that fell through, but we did rehearse together.
Mhm.
It was me, Eric, Ted, and Jim Roop, and it was pretty awesome because we had a studio that we booked out, and some people came by and got to see us rehearse. I think on the EDL Facebook page, I think there's some videos of
Okay.
that rehearsaling. Uh, but it was pretty fun, because it was the first time I seen those dudes in 20 years and talked to some of them in that long.
But you and Ted are still pretty close, though.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Me and Ted are close. We talk more than me and Eric or me and Jim or and I talk to Jeff Elba every now and then. I talk to Jason every often, but like often isn't like once a year, twice a year. He's
Yeah.
still alive. That's what I need to know.
Yeah. I hear
But
you.
me and Ted talk, which is cool. You know what I mean? And but it was awesome. But if we had something in the future, probably I don't know. It depends if there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I think people don't understand, like when they talk reunion shows, how, especially when everyone's living across a different country, finding time to show up or practice or get things going, the logistics
yeah,
of doing it, are hard. It's not just like, it was where, everybody meet at the practice space at 7 p.m. on Sunday for band practice. You know what I mean? So now,
yeah.
man, I got to fly. We got to get gear. We got to find a place to play. Then where are we going to play? Who's going to promote it? That kind of situation.
Yeah, it would have to be the perfect thing. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
for us to commit to something like that. But it was awesome to see those dudes and to play those songs, and it was awesome. You know what I
Right.
mean? It really was. It was super fun.
Now, was Ted pretty hardcore Christian, or was everybody in the band a Christian, or was it just you? Or
No, we all went to the same church. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't go uh, about as Christian as we were talking earlier. We were kids. You know what I mean? We were
yeah,
kids. We would do stupid shit. But was our hearts maybe in the right place? Yeah. Did we pull it off? Probably not. You know what I mean?
I think you pulled it off
Uh,
pretty decent. You know what I mean?
but
But
yeah, no, we
I
all
think
went to
there's
the
a
same
problem with
church, and
yeah, but I
you
also
know,
think there's a problem with Christian music in general because all you're doing is you're not idolizing Motley Crue, you're idolizing Stryper. You're not idolizing Slayer, you're idolizing Deliverance. You know what I mean? And I'm definitely the same kind of putting myself in that category where you basically are replacing one thing for something else and still putting on that idle fucking platform of, oh man, this is a band, this is I mean, and it's been cool the last 3 years I've been doing the show, becoming friends with tons of musicians that I grew up listening to, and like bands like you and like all those guys were what I wanted to do. I mean, before the falling, as everyone calls me, it was I wanted to be a youth pastor. I wanted to play
yeah,
metal and have a sanctuary, kind of like heavy metal church. You know what I mean? But just for me, as I got older and seeing, for me, the flaws in not only the word but in also the actions of the people that live the word, it wasn't appealing to me anymore. So I mean, people ask me all the time. I didn't wake up on a Sunday and go, fuck Jesus, I'm out. You know what I mean? This was years of reading different religions and evaluating where I was and what I thought and why this doesn't make sense to me, and not having answers. The lamest thing for me is it's God's will, or it's God's plan. You don't need to understand. No, I disagree. If it's my life, I want to know what my plan is. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I mean, and over the years, it finally to the point where I was like, this makes no sense for me. So therefore, I don't want to be part of it.
yeah. Fair enough. You know what I mean? That's fine. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I respect where you're coming from. It's fine with me.
Are you still pretty devout? Are you still a Christian to this day?
No, no, I
Well,
wouldn't call myself a Christian. No, I would go with. It's very complicated.
let's be complicated, man. This is what the
All
show's
right.
about: is being complicated.
Okay. I would go with a Gnostic
Okay.
or a Hermeticist.
Okay.
You know, uh, like a chaos magician. An
Hmm.
occultist. Okay,
Okay. Neat.
that's where I'm coming from. Huh? You're
That, no,
breaking up a
that's
little bit, but could be
no,
just my
that,
connection.
no, that's great. I mean, that's you're one of the first to really come out, and except for a few others. Pardon?
You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. No, that's super. Definitely, I know what Gnostic is. What is her the other one?
Hermetics.
Yes. Explain that to me, please.
Uh, Hermetics is, you could think of it like of like an Egyptian mystery school. Okay, it's like the old Egyptian religion. Um, it talks about balance.
Hmm.
That more or less is what the issue, or that's what they're want you to achieve is perfect balance,
Yeah.
right? Between all of your spectrums, between male and female, light and dark, all of those things, what you're trying to achieve is perfect balance.
Okay, that kind of reminds me of a lot of like Hinduism as well, where you're trying to find the inner balance within yourself, between the light, the dark.
Oh yeah, yeah. But when I said chaos, also you could throw in like some Zen Buddhists in there too.
It's very cool. So, what I mean, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, this is kind of what the show is. Um, what got you? And when I say the rejection of Christianity, I'm not saying that I don't think Jesus had some interesting things to say. I think he did. I think that if Jesus were real, the books have been so misinterpreted of what he's actually saying. I think he has a lot of very Hindu, very very Buddhist kind of mentality on what he's saying, other than the literals. So what kind of got you there to where you were like, man, just like this doesn't make sense. The same way with me, like it just one day, after this, I was like, it doesn't make sense.
Right. Jesus Christ is awesome. You know what I mean? His message is different than Paul's,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my early beef with Christianity was free will and predestination, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had
Totally.
major falling outs with that because I preferred free will.
Yep.
But as I got where I'm at now, there's just a difference between Jesus Christ and Paul, right?
Mm-hmm.
Modern Christianity is more of a Paul type thing.
I agree.
So, whatever. If they want to go that way, that's fine. But it doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people are going to
But
choose.
for me, it was just, when you learn more or you expose yourself to different cultures and
Mhm.
different belief systems, you can see that more or less it's all the same, kind of. You know what I
Well,
mean?
definitely, especially where the story of Jesus and a lot of that. I mean, there were the exact same stories going out the Mediterranean for 5 to 1,000 years between them. That just
Well,
this
yeah.
story was
There's
this story was this story.
yeah, there's like 7 other gods that did exactly the same thing he did.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, when you it just depends if you open yourself up to those other things. But if you stay in where you're at,
I agree.
that's all you're gonna know. And that's kind of what that culture promotes is to, we talk about music, secular or the world, they
Yeah.
want you enclosed in there. But, you know, if you go out there, to the world or the secular from that kind of culture, you're going to be shocked. You're going to be,
Mm-hmm.
what? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not going to make a lot of sense because the world's fucking huge, man.
Yeah.
It's it's way bigger.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
way bigger than what you believe.
Yeah, our history is bigger. Our galaxy is bigger. Our everything that has happened in thousands of years before Jesus have been bigger. I agree with you. I mean, we are not even a speck of dust in the cosmos of time, infinity, knowledge, or anything. We're still that big. I agree with that 100%.
But the free will and predestination was an issue, but I just started to try to learn,
Mm-hmm.
about other religions and about other aspects of being human,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all I wanted to do, or that's all I wanted to do then, and that's all I want to do now is try to be good.
Yeah.
I want to be good to other humans, regardless of their skin color, their identity politics,
Yeah.
their belief structures. I don't really give a shit.
Yeah. No,
If
I
it's
agree.
if he's alive, he's me. I am him. We're the
Mm-hmm.
same. Doesn't
We are
matter.
one. We are one in this
Uh,
universe. Yeah.
yeah.
I agree.
Um,
That's a lot of the problem I have with Christianity is not only the absolution of what has to be done in order to appease God, but then also the stipulations of writings by men that I mean, people argue with me and I'm like, they talk about Jesus and the New Testament. I'm like, well, even Christian scholars will say, they don't know who wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They have no original text. They don't know the translation, so therefore everyone's like, well, the Bible lines up. I'm like, well, of course, if you read this story, you can add to this story. It's like RoboCop 1 and 2. Of course, what RoboCop 1 was about. Now you can add to it and make it to your own, So I think, that's the problem that I have. A lot of most of it is that they are the absolute sure that we haven't died. We're all
well,
here. once we die, we'll know what happens, or we won't know, depending on. But it's the absolution.
Yeah,
I'm right, you're
you
wrong.
know,
You don't know what you don't know what's best for you. God does.
yeah, you can go with what Bryce said. He said that the kingdom of heaven is now. It's within you now,
Yes.
right? It's not the future. It's not when you die. It's now. It's here. It's happening. It's happening
Yeah.
fucking now, man.
Yeah, you're making
So,
it here, or that this
right?
is the shot you have.
And so there's just a difference in modern Christianity versus what he had to talk about.
No,
Because he was, if you go into it, he's pretty gnarly. You know what I
yeah,
mean? His what he's talking about is not it's not the same Yahweh.
no,
You know what I mean? It's not the same thing.
yeah.
So um
Let me
it's
ask you a
interesting.
quick question. Uh, Tell me your relationship with Larry Bowden.
Larry,
Larry,
Larry, Larry was a manager
I
of
met Larry
I
this year. I met Larry
yeah.
at this Chains and Festival thing down in Springfield, Missouri, which is about 2 hours from here. And
Wow.
Deliverance was playing, and Jimmy's a good friend of mine. We've been good friends for a couple of years now, and I've had me and George Ochoa from Deliverance. He was the first guy in the scene I met when I was like 14. So
Right.
me and George go way back. So I was like, oh man, I'll come down. So I did a show down there with this. I thought I was buying this really good camera, but it sucked. Don't watch the interview; it sucks. The sound is horrible. But I met this guy named Larry, and I'll say at first he was grinding my gears. You know what I mean? He was kind of
Mhm.
just poking at me and fucking with me. And so I'm sitting just away from everybody, just having a moment. And he's talking on the phone. He's like, I'm talking to somebody who knows you. I'm like, oh, cool. I think maybe it was like, Brian Killaroo or somebody else that I've interviewed or whatnot. And he's like, no, man. I'm like, well, who are you talking to? And he's like, I'll get with you in a minute. So he's off the phone, and then he's like, I don't believe you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I don't believe you. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I don't believe you're an atheist. I'm like, well, first of all, man, now you're calling me a liar, and you're kind of pissing me off. You know what I mean? Like just because I'm friends with Christians doesn't mean, I'm here doing research on, why these people are Christians. Plus, it was just a good time to come see Jimmy and hang out for a night and have a good time. But then we started talking, and he was one of the guys back in Sanctuary. Then he was like, yeah, and I brought up you. And he's like, oh, man, I used to be their manager. I was like, no shit. I was like, that is such a small world. But, yeah, so I actually asked him to be on the show a couple times, and he has not responded. So.
Oh, Larry?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like an early manager of EDL. He helped us do demos and stuff like that.
Nice.
He was all right. And I think there was a time where he visited me in Flagstaff here, probably whatever, 10 years ago or something. But
Oh, wow.
I haven't talked to him,
Yeah.
most when I left that scene, I left.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I was close with Jeff Ballou, and when I left, I left. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I haven't talked to Jeff forever. So
It's funny. Me and Jeff were supposed to do an episode the other day, but he had a family thing come up, so we had to reschedule. So I'm glad then you reached out. I'm like, oh, this is rocking. I'm getting some interviews, But yeah, Jeff's
awesome.
super nice guy. Super nice guy.
Yeah, and, if Larry, wants to, he will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever.
I don't know, but he'd never.
I wouldn't take it personally.
No. It was the whole thing. Like he was always like every time he'd look at me, he'd be scratching his head. Like I can't pinpoint you. I'm like, dude, I'm just a dude that grew up loving Christian metal. That I'm friends with a lot of the older guys, and I will never out anybody. But it'd be amazing for the Christian audience to know how many Christian artists that are still playing their Christian music are not Christians and don't believe in it. And I don't care. That's not my road. But they're doing it because they're making money. And I'm like, that's fine, man. You guys put, how many years of work into it, make that money. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
it's
I'm sure I'm pretty offensive. The things I said that I believe in, or the things that
oh, Christians are going to be like, yeah,
religion is, rules and whatever, right? And a way of living, possibly. But spirituality is experience.
mhm,
Okay, you have to experience the spirit,
yeah.
right? And there's some churches, the Pentecostal guys, they get pretty wild, right?
Well, yeah,
But
I went to
the
the
the, the
healing,
spirit moves, the spirit, there's spirits everywhere, right? And you said you're an atheist, which is whatever, right? But what I want you to do is look into those near death experiences. You have to.
well, I
Okay.
agree that there's
And
something else out there. I'm not
okay.
saying,
All right. That's fine. That's fine.
yeah,
That's all that. Yeah.
yeah.
That.
I
All
don't
right.
believe
Good.
that we're our own thing floating in this massive. There is something, but it's not
Oh
Jesus.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not God.
Yeah.
It's not for me personally. It's not Yahweh. It's not Jesus. It's not Joseph Smith. It's not Scientology. It's we all have it wrong. We don't have it right because we don't know.
Yeah. And if you do your Hindu and your Zen stuff,
Mhm.
we are God just experiencing this reality, and you
Exactly.
go with your science, and this is just an illusion, a
Hmm.
matrix. You know what I
Totally.
mean? You've everybody's heard of the double slit experiment. Everybody knows
Mhm.
what it is,
Oh yeah.
right? So it's wild, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so just be cool. Just be cool, love, don't
Yeah.
be afraid. All of that shit. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, happens. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah. I will say and the further I realized in my years, the further I got away from Christianity, the better person I believe I became. I believe that I was a more, less judgmental, less angry, less this. I just kind of like you said, let the chips fall where they lay for everybody. And I think as an atheist, I'm a much better person, a more humanist person, and humanistic. I'm sorry, and compassionate person because I understand the trouble that we all as humans are all going through as a species, and I think that's given me more comfort and more opportunity to be charitable and forgiving than Christianity ever could have taught me. And one of the first books I ever read as a Christian, and it's so much it made a lot of sense to me, was when I first read the Satanic Bible. And everybody freaked out about it, but I was in 10th grade and it was in our school library, and I was like, you know what? Everyone says don't touch it because you're inviting demons into your house and whatnot. But I was like, you know what? I want to see what this man has to say. And the more I read it, the more it made sense to me. It's just a
Yeah.
secular humanist book. It's not about magic and demons and the devil.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
It's not about. I mean, there's high level occultists you can learn
totally,
about. You know what I mean?
totally. If you
If
want to
if
do some
you're into that stuff,
or
you know what I mean?
Valley shit and all that, yeah, there's people that are into that. That's I don't believe in Jesus the same way I don't believe in spells and the Yeti and the Loch Ness monster. You know what I
Come
mean?
on, man.
Santa Claus,
Come
man.
on.
Damn it! I'm gonna catch Santa Claus this year. Easter Bunny.
No Bigfoot, no
No,
ghosts. You
no,
never had a ghost story?
no, never have. And the thing
No.
is, I understand that there. If that would get you through the day and that's what you rely on, and it's interesting to you, have fun. You know what I mean? To have a good time doing it, but you know, until for me there is there's a scientist that started this in the 70s. I can't remember his name, but it was like Dr. Michael Schneider or something like that. He used to go on talk shows and debunk psychics and magicians, and he has $1 million policy. Anybody at any time can walk in, and if he can prove magic, the afterlife, Loch Ness monster, any of that stuff, boom, it's $1 million. You get $1 billion right now. If that shit were real, somebody would
Yeah.
have won that a long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be also up with the latest scientific findings in regards to afterlife stuff.
Sure.
You've heard the trope of the tunnel, right? There's a
The
tunnel
white
when you
light.
die and whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The latest stuff is that's only here. in the US, like in Africa, South America, India,
Mhm.
there's no tunnel.
Hmm.
It's different. It's different over there. So everybody
Okay.
has a different experience, right? Um,
But do you think a
but
lot of it is
you've
American
never
and
seen a
just
ghost?
no?
No,
No.
no.
Hmm.
I've had several ghost things.
Cool.
Yeah,
But do you think that because Americans and we're told through movies and whatnot, like, and other people saying they've had near death experiences, like we're just copying what we think we should see because they say, when I died, I saw my mother in this white light. And if other, billions, hundreds of millions of people are seeing something completely different, could that be something that we're just
yeah.
putting in our own brain that when people die or think they've died or had a near death experience, it's the status quo of what is in their brain already?
Kinda. Part of it is a cultural programming, right?
That's the word I'm
Um,
looking for. Yes.
yeah, part of it is cultural programming, and you've heard that the light is a trap, right? So there's many. The rabbit hole goes deep once you get off. Once you get on different trains, it
Mm-hmm.
goes deep. Uh, but there's stories of near death experiences for Christians where they're expecting to see Jesus and stuff like that, and that is not what's happening. You know what I mean?
What are these people coming back saying they've seen?
Or they'll see these Indian guys, as best as I can describe it, guys with turbans, right?
Okay.
And they have like jewels and shit on them, and they, they tell them the same stories, like, "Oh, it's not your time yet. Go back." You know what I mean?
Okay.
But it's not Jesus, right?
Or some
But
angels, some blonde
yeah,
haired
yeah,
white dude going, "Go, be at peace."
yeah. So it's just, you just have to look for those things. Um, I can pull up all the information. It's on my phone, but
Yeah, yeah. Text me,
there's
email me over some stuff to look at. I would love to look at it.
yeah. So for listeners that I'm blasphemous and a heretic, uh,
Thank
you
you. Love
can
you.
uh, there's several things you can learn if you wanted. Uh, so some of my things that I like are podcasts because I drive, right? I'm a
Yeah,
delivery driver. I've ran a delivery company for 20 years.
yeah.
I'm on the road, uh, so a little bit of solitary time, right? And sometimes you got to listen to something, otherwise you're just going to go crazy. So I started
Totally.
listening to podcasts. There's several to listen to. Everybody has their own jam, whatever.
Totally.
But if you want to learn some different weird shit, uh, there's a podcast called Aeon Byte. That's like Gnostic and Hermetis. We
Okay.
talk about Jesus being, Jesus when he threw over the money changers at the temple. He said that the money changers didn't know him, that they don't know his father. They don't
Mhm.
know his father's name.
Yeah.
He said that they come from the devil, like a lying person, right? So
Yeah.
Jesus is already claiming to be something different than
Yes.
the Old Testament Yahweh,
Yeah.
right? So I don't
There's
even know why those.
a lot of texts where Yahweh is actually the evil one. He's actually the false god. There's a lot of
Yeah,
texts.
that's Gnosticism. You can go to the Nag Hammadi library; those are Gnostics, right? But Christ is talking about that.
That's neat.
Jesus talked about it. Anyways, so you can look up Aeon Byte podcast. You can listen to Alan Watts. He's a philosopher from the 70s and 50s. Dude's gnarly.
Okay.
Uh, I'll send you all this, but for other people,
Well,
Alan
yeah, yeah.
Watts.
Send me a list of good stuff, and I'll put when I do my editing, I'll put all the links so that people can find it as well.
Yeah, and then there's fun stuff too, to
Yeah,
listen to. But it just depends on how far people are along their experience,
and how
and I
willing
don't
they
have
are.
any I don't have any beef with if you want to be Christian, like a modern day Christian, whatever, dude. You know what I mean?
But it's a scary
I
thing
know
that modern day Christians
we
are more nationalists, man. We and, you
well, yeah,
know,
but I'm not. Yeah, yeah.
okay,
Before we go there,
okay,
uh, but if you're just like a Jesus dude
yeah,
today, whatever, cool, man, whatever. But if you're, we just had a pretty big political event happen.
yeah,
The winner is talking, what his plan is, and his plan is pretty gnarly.
very.
If you're into it, then awesome for you. But if you're not, it's gonna get wild,
Mhm.
right? It has a potentiality to be wild, right? Again, let's get weird, let's get zen. Nothing has happened. All we have is now.
Yep.
Right? The future has not happened. The past, all we have is right now.
Yep.
So we don't know what's going to happen, right? There's potentialities, and there's a potentiality I'll be on those streets,
Hmm.
right? You all know where I came from, you know where I live. So if you're, a Nazi, I'll meet you on the streets, man. It's all good.
That's
You
the
know what I
one
mean?
thing that I spent a lot of my years wrecking those dudes like Nazis. There's only one good Nazi, and that's a dead Nazi. That's
Right. So not you know what I mean? And so if you're just, you want to live under a totalitarian regime, there's several in the Middle East. But if you
Mhm.
want to try to do it here, you're probably going to encounter some pushback. You might not.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. All I know is
America's we're pretty dumb. We're pretty stupid.
and
So
noisy.
obviously we're pretty stupid, or
Well,
there's a majority of people that want to go that way.
oh, I
So
can't wait to start reading the comments of this section, man. This is going to be great. This is
I
going to be.
mean, again, if that's what they want, that's awesome. Good for them.
But
They're
it's not as
creating their
scary. I get it's what they want, but they don't realize that any form of nationalism is fascist. Whether it's white nationalism, Christian nationalism, it doesn't matter because they're for the people that are in control, that want to be part of that specific group. Man, they ignore the needs and the rights of every other group. You know?
well, yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah, no, I
And
know, but I'm just saying it's like
I
how
mean,
do
and
people not realize this guy is
if
a fucking totalitarian? Sorry.
you know, if people view it and they're hyped on whatever Project 25, then fine, fuck them, whatever. That's their gig. But like I said, I'll meet them in the streets, man.
No, I hear you. But also the
You
scary
know,
thing is it's
I'll
gonna.
be in the streets, so it doesn't
You tell me
matter.
where, I'll be right next to you, man. Shoulder to shoulder, we will fuck some shit up.
So
But also,
you
it's going
know,
to affect not only the 4 years, but it can affect the next 40 years because of the Supreme Court. Because if he could appoint two more people, I mean, Jerry Falwell back in 1974 when he started his crusade against abortion to get into politics. Up until 73, Christians don't even want to talk about that. The Catholic Church and the Christian majority had no say. They didn't give a shit about until Falwell is making this a political issue, and therefore it went from that until the 80s with gays, and they wanted registration for homosexuals to make sure that, and this is coming from the lady in 1979 who was she was like a mayor of some San Bernardino or something like that. She wanted registration for homosexuals, so where they couldn't teach kids. This war has been going on a lot longer than the last 8 years. This war's been going on
well,
decades.
well, yeah, yeah. Part of so we talked about podcasts and
Mhm.
trying to learn. Um, there's a podcast called Straight a White American Jesus. If you're not following that and you want to be informed about Project 2025, how it might impact your belief structure, what you believe, what you can and can't do, or if you're maybe pro 25 and you want to see what your enemy's talking about, Straight White American Jesus. So it's just the falling out of, like, you remember when the Catholics said that ladies could be cool and gay people could be cool. Well, the Heritage Foundation, the guy that made that, got
Mhm.
pissed and made the Heritage Foundation. Hence, now we're here, right? Now we're here where we're at.
Wow.
We also talked about being in the here now, not knowing what's going on. with these Christians and Jews, they got to build a temple, right? They got to cause World War III before Jesus comes back or some
Yep.
shit, right? Or we got to set up
Yep. Once the temple is
Jesus's,
restored in Jerusalem,
yeah, yeah, and we got to set up the kingdom of heaven, or even though he said it's now and it's in
yeah,
you and it's
it's all around us in the present.
but I mean, if you go with your Hindu shit, and they have the Vedas, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go with that, everything is supposed to be what is happening and it won't be any better.
Mm-hmm.
It will get worse. If you go with the Vedas, right? And
I think
damn,
what
it
I'm
starts with a
hearing
K.
out of that, my friend, I think it's going to get worse. I think it's going to get much.
Yeah. If you go with what they want to, dang it.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to cut you off. I
No,
apologize.
no, no, no. You're good. I was trying to remember the yuga cycles. Gosh, the Kali Yuga. Dang it, not the Vedas, but the Kali Yugas out of the Indian stuff, their belief system. Uh, yeah, it's gonna get worse, man. It's gonna get way worse. Which is whatever. You know what I mean? We're just here experiencing it, right?
But I will
It's
say
fine.
I'm not an extremist in any way, shape, or form. But there is a point in time. Same with the Black Panthers in the '70s. We have to stand up. We have to fight. We cannot let this shit. We can't have it. Democracy, freedom. When they talk about the
Well,
American way, it's in danger right now. Right, and
it's
I'm not talking 10 years from now. I'm talking right now. People, this is November 17th, 2024, my friend, at 7:30 Kansas City time. We are in danger right fucking now. This is not something in a movie. This is
it's
not Red Dawn. It's happening.
it's pretty wild. We fought one world war over fascism,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot
Let
of
it
people talk about
stroll.
how history repeats. We're in it now, man. And
We elected it. We let it stroll. We let it stroll right back in. I'm sorry, not we. You know who you are. You all know who.
but I mean, maybe the first go around, where Nazis, were wrecking shop on the world stage. Maybe if history repeats itself and we're at the doorstep of it starting, maybe this time around, instead of German citizens, maybe it can be American citizens that fight and try to stop
Yep.
any chaos that could potentially happen, right? I don't know,
That's funny.
but
That was something that was one of my first things that really kind of put me on the path of learning about other religions, and especially I don't know much about Judaism. There's a rabbi that's in my neighborhood that he's from Australia, and I guess he's pretty badass rabbi. So I actually sent him an email last week, and I've got a meeting with him next week where he's going to be on the show. And
awesome.
yeah, because I don't know much about rabbinical studies. But I remember it was my ninth grade year. We were doing in social studies or history. No, history. Yeah. We were doing a study of World War II. And we had a Jewish person come in and, give us, who was a survivor. And it was gut wrenchingly horrible. But he showed us this one clip, and I read it, and it stuck with me since I was 16 years old. That in one of the male camps, in one of the bunks, a Jewish, God's chosen people, Jewish man had carved in the wall, if there is a God, he should get on his knees and beg our forgiveness. And I'm just like, what? And that really made me start thinking, what kind of creator, and especially, those chosen people would let his family, his pride, his love go through this atrocity. So when I talk with other people on my show, not only do I talk the existence and the real of God, but I also talk the nature of God. That Yahweh was not a good God. He was a jealous, mean, tyrannical dictator. He was not love.
Well,
Yeah.
he says it. He says it.
Yeah.
That he's a jealous dude. So
Yeah. And I just don't get all these Christians that are like, no, God's good. No, God's not good. He's
it's
not.
it's a pretty gnarly existence here where we have to consume other living things to live. It's a pretty gnarly existence.
Or sacrifice them with their blood to make atonement for something. It's a
Yeah,
cruel.
it's
It's
pretty
cruel.
wild.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. I'm gonna go
Including
with
his own son. He had to spill his own son's blood so there'd be atonement for the rest of the generations, which is fucking nuts.
it's nuts. But again, I think Jesus was smart enough to know that he was probably Gnostic,
Yeah.
and he was just trying to fulfill all of the stuff that the Jews wanted, and he did. He pulled it off. But it's it's wild. Um, it's a wild existence,
It is.
that obviously, if you're going with those big three, a Yahweh type God, uh, he's a bad boy, for regular humans.
Yeah.
There's other cultures, you could be Buddhist, man,
Yeah.
and you're fine. There's nobody out to get you. um, but
Or he could be
it's
the guy from Kansas that started the flying spaghetti monster. Have you heard about that? It's a
a
it's a
vaguely.
it's a joke church, but some guy here in Topeka, Kansas, which is our capital, was just like he wanted to make his own religion, and it's a flying spaghetti monster wearing like when you dump the pasta into one of those sifts ladles.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
It's
yeah,
got
yeah.
like meatballs and eyes. He's got one of those like sitting on his head, and he made
Oh,
it
yeah,
into
yeah,
a
yeah. I know what you
religion.
mean.
Yeah, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. But I'm just
But
saying,
you,
it's like,
you know what you're talking about is real Gnostic. You know what I
mhm.
mean? And you said you know about it. It's
I'm not an expert. I've read some. The Book of Thomas is amazing. The Book of Magdalene's great. The Book of Judas, if most Christians would read that, would get a much different idea who Judas really was.
yeah, you got to read the apocryphal or the Gnostic text. If you
Mhm.
read that stuff, it's not the same thing as regular Christianity, but it's uncomfortable. Sometimes with new stuff. I'm getting old, right? And I'm a driver, and sooner or later, I'm gonna have to do something else. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have to buy another business or
Yeah,
learn a new skill, right? And
totally.
it's nerve wracking, right? It's scary. So same thing with learning knowledge, right? But it's fine. You can always be like, I don't like this. This is lame, or I gravitate. It's whatever gravitates to you,
Totally.
man. You know what I mean?
Well,
But
it's
it's
funny
it's
when
fun.
my daughter
It's
gets in the
fun to
car.
learn.
I listen to Christian radio all the time, and my daughter's 13, and she knows how I feel. We've had very open discussions about Christianity and religion, and if that's what you gravitate towards, that's great. But she's like, Dad, why do you listen to stuff all the time? And I looked at her straight in the eye. I go, because I want to know what my enemy's up to. I want to hear what they're thinking.
Well, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's the it's a little Machiavellian where you keep your enemies close. Yeah, I get it.
You know,
You know, uh, but it's wild. You know what I mean? And there's
life,
so
life in
many.
general is wild. We don't need to make it wilder. You know what I mean? Like just having existence is wild. The fact that
Well,
we can sit
yeah,
here and do this is magic. It's amazing. We don't need to
it,
to put
it's
on all these third bronze age fucking belief systems and rules and stipulations. And if you do this, you get this. And if you believe this, you get a mansion on the streets of gold. But then if you believe this and some other thing, you get 72 fucking virgins. It's just it shows that these manuscripts were written by men because that's what men desire. You know what I mean?
yeah.
They're not holy. They're not divine. They're what corrupt men wrote so they could get what they desire.
Yeah, I mean, so we talked a little bit about different spiritual aspects of spiritual or belief life.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're into psychology and stuff,
Very much so.
I really like Carl Jung.
Oh yeah,
So
Carl Jung is great.
right. So if you haven't ever read Carl Jung, uh, read some, listen to a podcast on Carl Jung,
Mm-hmm.
because what he's talking about is spirituality, but it's in a different words, but it's the same shit.
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
so
I hear you.
there's
Carl Jung's great.
okay, right. So there's a
The
lot of
two
ways to fix your mind to deal with this experience.
mhm. The two podcasts I kind of listen to just for fun, just because they rip on Christians and it makes me laugh. Is Matt Dillahunty from The Line, which he was an ex Baptist preacher that turned atheist. He's fun, but his more, I mean, not saying that he's not smart and intelligent and whatnot, but he just calls people out and he's kind of rude, and I kind of like that at times. But then there's a metal looking dude named Amon Aroth, and this guy, I love listening to him talk. He does I think a show called Talk Heathen or something like that, where I mean, this guy's brilliant. I mean, he knows cosmology, psychology. I mean, he's well versed in everything. So when somebody comes in and tries to throw something at him, he's ready for the attack. And he looks like Glenn Benton from Deicide, and it's great.
Right.
So it's a great show.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, I was noticing before we started all your books and whatnot. I was like, man, Carl's a dork. He likes to read. No, but I'm with you. Man. I love reading.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of that stuff is my wife's. She's obviously a book nerd, so some are mine, but most of them are hers.
Okay, I'm gonna let you go because I've got some. It's been almost 2 hours, and I know that we've covered a lot of good stuff. Two quick things, real quick. What would you say to Christians who are maybe now seeing this that looked up to you, and what do you have to say to those Christians? And to just your final words on life. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second.
I'm going to wait to answer for his request.
My request. Yeah, I mean, to any of the Christian
artists
out there that look up the Christian bands, like, what would you say?
Well, I mean, if I offended anybody that may have looked up to me at that time, I'm sorry, man, but that's where I'm at, and you don't have to like me. That's cool. I'm cool with it. But just know that I love you anyways. So it doesn't matter if you hate me or not, because I'm you and you are me. The kingdom of God is in me and it's in you. So, and all we have is right now. Nothing is guaranteed. There's no tomorrow or yesterday. All it is now. So, if I offended you or whatever, or you don't like me, that's cool. Whatever, I haven't been in this scene in 25 years, 30 years. So, when you grow and you learn and you read and you experience, we talked about ghost shit and seeing other weird shit and being a part of some shit that's metaphysical. Yeah. That's spirituality, man. You got to go out, make some shit happen, do some stuff. I'm not talking about violence or enforcing your will on other people. I'm just talking about, I don't know. Have you meditated? Yeah. Have you shut your mind off?
Yeah.
Have you go out, go inside? That's where Christ said it was. It's inside.
Here, go deep,
Right. So go in there, wrestle those demons, man. That's why they're called your demons. You got to go in there. It's just you, though. Don't be afraid. Just go in there.
That's great.
Fuck some shit up.
Yeah.
Make some shit happen. Be happier. Be happy to the other humans that are around you. Love them, man. Because we're all here together, but it's all you. So it doesn't matter. Yeah. What was the last question? And so again, I apologize if I offended you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, basically, you answered both in the same thing. Like, what would you say to your Christian fans that still, listen? And the thing is, like I was saying, like I was going to say earlier, and it just kind of got away. Like the Supertones' first album just came out on vinyl, and I bought it. And man, that is a fucking Jesus-y album. And but I'm a huge ska fan, love it. But you know what? I still bought that record, and I will still listen to that record because you know what? It was a fun record at a fun time, running around with my friends who were Christian, listening to that record, smoking cigarettes, grabbing a 40 of King Cobra, hitting the beach. You know what I mean? Just I bought that record because the music should always bring you back to happy places in their life. It might not, always, but for me, that record was, man, that was 1995 or 96 when that album came out. Man, I was a pup. I was 19 years old.
Yeah, we were all young making music and being kids, man. And yeah, we all if you that's all we were. We're just kids. So if you judged us back then, or if you still judge us for those things and you haven't let it go, then whatever, that's your beef. I'm sure for us that have made mistakes and made peace with it and moved on, we don't really give a shit. So whatever. You know what I mean?
That's a question I was going to ask you, and it kind of alluded to me because we got over. Did you guys, as either band, Nicene or EDL, ever feel pressure from the scene to be something evangelical that maybe you weren't comfortable with or weren't going to do? Like, did any bandmates or anybody like, look, man, if you're playing Christian shows, you need to be witnessing, you need to be altar calling.
There was,
that shit out there.
Yeah, that happened. At certain shows. Yeah, there's some venues that wanted you to do that or whatever, and if we wanted to do it, we would have done it. If we didn't do it, then we didn't do it. You know what I mean? But yeah, there was some of that pressure, and usually for me, I would just ignore them. If it was something I didn't really give a shit. I was there to make music, and if you liked it, you liked it. If you didn't, you didn't. I don't really care. That's still who I am. If you don't like me, that's fine. I don't really care. You're not paying my bills. You're not taking care of me or my family.
I hear you,
so, brother. And when you start doing that, then yeah, maybe I'll be more courteous. But until then, I don't really give a shit. So
love it. I love it.
Well, I think most people are like that. I could be wrong, but
no, I think most rational people are like that. But I mean, I know, but I know that, like I said, talking with other guests and whatnot, like coming from either affiliations of church or labels. Pardon, there was a big push when they did shows to, like, you got to be godly, you got to represent the torch of Jesus. You got to make sure that this alternative of metal is alternative with Jesus. You know what I mean?
I mean, if you're playing in sanctuaries, you better expect it. If you're playing the Roxy, probably not. If you're playing sports bars, probably not. But if you're playing Calvary Chapel, probably.
But I do remember.
Why we didn't play a lot of those.
Yeah, see, at the Roxy show with the Crucified, I remember Mark doing a big sermon altar call at the Roxy. I remember Jimmy Brown and Bob Beeman from Deliverance when I saw them at the Country Club do a big, this is the moment to come to Jesus. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's unheard of, but I don't want to say names, but people I've talked to said it made them uncomfortable because they were there to play, not to preach.
I think maybe at the very start of that scene, what we were trying to do is go out and spread the gospel, if you will. But